And then what I had to learn for myself is really to talk about myself and talk about what I do. Um, a lot of times as doctors, especially when you've come from the traditional model, a person may be coming to see you because, well, your name was on their insurance card. And so, that's just where they went. But versus now, people come to see me for a reason, because they know that I'm, offering something more and something different. And they know that they want and they need that.
Well, Dr. Withers, it is great to have you here today. I'm here with my co-host, Velyn Hopkins. How are you, Velyn?
Wonderful, thank you. It's just been an excellent day so far. Looking forward to, it continuing, and I know it will since we're going to be in this conversation with the amazing Dr. Shayla.
Oh, yep.
Thanks for joining us. Having me. I'm excited to join you.
So, Doctor, let me ask you this. When you work with your patients, do they call you Dr. Shayla, Dr. Withers, Doc? What do you like to be called?
That's a great question. And I get that often just because my name is so long. And so I tell them, it could be Dr. Shayla, it could be Dr. Toombs-Withers, Dr. TW, really, as long as it's not hey you.
Okay, we won't hey you. So, well, we're both really excited to have you on the show for a number of reasons. One is you are a plant-based lifestylist. You work with your patients, teaching them health patterns around eating, around exercise. And can you give us a little backstory on what it was like pre-plant-based for you, why plant-based, and how you have grown your practice and you work with patients? So that's kind of a mouthful.
That's a huge question.
Yes,
Let's start at the beginning. I'd love to hear that backstory piece. Really.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm originally from Atlanta, so down where Velyn is. And so growing up in the South, as I'm sure Velyn can relate, you're accustomed to that Southern eating. And so my favorite was mac and cheese growing up, and like the kind with the extra cheese, the extra butter, the extra cream, all the things in it. But as I got older, I started having these just debilitating stomach pains, to a point where really every time I would eat anything, it seemed like I would just be doubled over in pain. And so I went to see my doctor and had the full, $1 million workup, as I call it. They couldn't find anything, but I had a GI specialist who just recommended. He said, well, you are, a person of color. So he said, you may just be lactose intolerant. So he said, let's just give it a try of you cutting out dairy and see how you feel. And so I did. I cut it even just within like the first 2 weeks of just having no dairy. I felt so much better. Definitely wasn't having those stomach issues or any of those things. And so, it really went from there. I was in college at that point. And so it really went from there of just like, I got to look this up more and see, what's been going on, because how could, my favorite thing that I love to eat all this time, have been doing this to my body. And so, just going through school, going through medical school, learning more, seeing more as I became a resident physician in family medicine, and just seeing really how a lot of these lifestyle conditions were playing a part. Seeing people who are having heart attacks and strokes and, uncontrolled diabetes and getting limbs amputated. And just seeing that a large part of this was lifestyle related in terms of what people were feeding themselves and, lack of movement and stress and sleep and these other factors. And so making that change within my own diet and seeing my own health improve, and then seeing, what was going on with my patients just really led me down that road of self-learning and wanting to learn more for myself. Really, I stumbled across, some of the more kind of plant-based Bibles, if you will. So, the China Study. And I remember early on, I would be into Lindsay Nixon of Happy Herbivore and kind of would just, consume all of these materials and things. And really just the more I learned and did within my own life, and saw those changes, the more I wanted to just spread the word and do more for others. And as my health improved, I got into athleticism. I was never an athlete growing up. I was the kid, if you told me to go run a lap, I was going to be mad about it. So, going from that to doing 5Ks, marathons, triathlons, just really, powered by plants and making this change in my own lifestyle. And so that's really what drove me to where I am now.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm going to continue Kathleen's question and kind of get the mid part there. What was it like going through medical school and knowing what you knew even early on? How did you maneuver that? Was there difficulty in you learning one thing and knowing something else, and knowing that you needed to learn more of something else that you weren't learning in medical school? Tell us a little bit about what that experience was.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and so it was challenging. And at that point, I still wasn't full on plant-based. I had started making some cuts of some things. You probably could really call it more vegetarian like at that point. But because I was still in that learning mode of, so reading and learning more. And as we know, I went to medical school in 2007. So it was, quite a while ago. There was still not as much as we have out there now in terms of, online resources and even things where you could just walk in the store, and have products available to you. I did have a medical school classmate, and she was vegan. She was plant-based. And so she would, commonly tell me about, like things she was doing and, how she would eat. And so I would pick up some things from her. And so that was really helpful. And then because I did go to an osteopathic medical school, we did talk a bit about nutrition and lifestyle, and which now I found out, because I was just in my bubble of the osteopathic realm, that this wasn't common for even in other medical schools for people to learn this. But we did actually talk about these things and how they played a part in health, even as a medical student. And so that was helpful too.
Something you mentioned, you said that, there's more products in stores today. And I definitely want to get into that conversation because, and get your take on it with the patients you work with. You're whole food plant-based, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now with the products in the stores, I just did a huge blog post about the McPlant meal that a lot of people are thinking that it's healthy and these processed vegan foods are healthy. Mm-hmm. How do you address that with your patients when they say, oh, I'm eating the Beyond Meat and I'm eating this and that, and it's not healthy. Mm-hmm. So what's the whole process that you go through with your patients?
Yeah. And I see it two ways, because as we all know, we're individuals, and what one person may be able to do, another person, may be a little bit more challenging for them. So I see it a couple of ways. I have some folks who do need those products, things like the Beyond Burger or the non-dairy cheese or what have you, the vegan cheese, to actually make that transition. And if they need that, we do talk about it. We definitely talk about it. We still talk about that, hey, you're still getting this much oil, you're still getting, this much saturated fat, those things. So we talk about even making a transition from those foods. But I still, if they can do that, introducing a Beyond Burger, and that helps them to cut down, 3 less steaks they may eat in the week, then we go for it. And then something else that I do with my patients is I actually share recipes a lot with them. Because especially, like I said, I'm the mac and cheese girl, growing up, I loved it. And so I've found ways now where I use a cashew-based cheese that I make myself. It's just, really simple cashews, lemon, nutritional yeast, and spices in it. But I share, a lot of recipes with my patients too, so that they can learn how to still create these flavors and textures of foods that they like, but they'll be healthier for them. So,
I was just thinking, Dr. The Dr. TW's plant-based cookbook. I mean, it's like, if it's not out yet, it needs to be. I know.
But now, I'm one of those people that don't follow a recipe. I just, because, you've played with these things for so long, it's just I throw it in there and I'm like, well, I don't even, know how much I put in there. I just, to taste.
Have to do it again to figure that part out, right?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, that is so great, because we're about to launch our newsletter. And what we have said is we want to put recipes in it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking for the kind of recipes from people we know and love, and would love one of your recipes in our newsletter to help you as you get to the point where, I've got enough of them now, I'm going to do this book. So
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, I would love to share. And I have written a couple of them down. My husband, he stays on me. He's like, you gotta write this stuff down. And so he'll even stand by me sometimes and like look at what
Oh, I tell you, I got this download. It's like the Dr. TW plant-based cookbook. It's like for real. It's like, so write that one down, take that one to the bank. But speaking of to the bank, your wellness center, when did you start your wellness center? And it from what I've done my research on, it combines the plant-based lifestyle with athletics for, if you will, the average person.
And medicine.
Yeah, tell us when that started and, what the whole premise is in combining those two.
Yeah. So Essence of Health Wellness Clinic, I opened in 2019. So, the crazy part is that it was just in time for the pandemic, which none of us knew was to be expected. But yeah, so I opened it in 2019. And the reason that I opened it and what I strive to do really was to have a combination of incorporating plant-based nutrition, intentional active movement, as well as mindset and sound mental strategies for folks to prevent and reverse chronic disease. And so the way that things work within the clinic is that, I combine traditional scientific evidence-based medicine along with these more holistic and alternative practices to get people more on balance with their health and in prevention and in reversing some of these common chronic diseases that I mentioned, things like heart disease, heart attacks, high blood pressure, diabetes, those conditions.
Well, something I've noticed is that we as a society have normalized sickness. And, you mentioned the alternative practices. What are some things that people can do that won't seem too woo-woo, because you say yoga to some people and they go, oh, that's too woo-woo. But really, it's about getting in touch with their body and all that. So what's a starting place for somebody who is exploring the fact that they don't want to be sick all the time?
Yeah. So really, I look at that in a couple of ways. So one, we definitely look at what's on their plate because it's typically starting there with what's not making people feel their best. And even if, a lot of people don't seem to realize that even if it's not physically impacting you, still what you eat can be mentally impacting you too, because a lot of those, what's in the standard American diet, your heavy cheeseburgers or your fries and these kinds of things can also make you feel sluggish and then in turn make you feel fatigued. So then you don't want to go outside and go for a walk. And then in turn, your health can tend to suffer and worsen. So it's even, beyond just saying, okay, I'm going to, eat a little bit more broccoli so that I can get my blood pressure down. But you also want to be doing that so that you can just even feel better overall with your health. So, we look at that from twofold ways and see what changes that we can make within your diet. And then we look at those other factors. One, if you're getting any, and I like to say intentional movement instead of exercise. And the reason I separate the two is because, over time, I'll have some folks tell me, well, I move every day, I work for, here or there, and I'm constantly going. But I ask them, well, were you doing that because, you're just working, or were you doing that with a goal in mind? So when I say intentional movement is because you're moving with a purpose and with a goal in mind. So were you moving, to find some joy and to clear your brain? Were you moving because that you need this 15-minute walk to lower your blood sugar? So that's why I say intentional movement, so that we have some intention there. So we look at that and put that in place. We look at those other factors. So are you working, 12 hours a day? Then in turn, you're not getting enough sleep at night. So that's probably causing you to gain some weight even, which could be impacting your blood pressure even, which could maybe be causing some sleep apnea and some other issues. So a lot of these things build onto one another. So we really sit down and kind of break these things down and look at different aspects of it. Because I can easily just, give Mr. Jones this prescription and say, see you next time. But I'm going to take that individual much further by teaching them and having them make some of these more sustainable changes in their health.
Beautiful.
I love that. Now, did I hear you correctly saying that you also used sound as one of the modalities that you use for healing? Tell us a little bit about the sound therapy piece.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily perform sound therapy in the office, but I do have individuals incorporate that into their sleep or even relaxation, because what we know, about sound, it can be really good for sleep, helping you to clear anxiety, helping to just, more so focus. And so those things can be really helpful and incorporating a sleep hygiene strategy and in improving one's sleep can also be helpful in reducing anxiety by having peaceful by having peaceful sound therapy. And that can come in a number of ways. A lot of times I'm one that definitely send my patients a lot of like links or apps or things that they can, do these things with ease. And so, I may send them an app that they can pick up some sound therapy pieces and or find something on YouTube for them and send them and say, okay, use this, when you go to bed, just play it on your phone or your radio nearby and use this to help you improve your sleep or your mental health.
I love that because I don't think that people really realize that with the body's major composition being water, that sound impacts water, like Dr. Nemoto's study revealed. And depending on the type of healing that your body really needs or is asking for, there's certain sounds that are better for certain things. And so, that's something that is unique to you. I've talked to a lot of people practicing right now, and the sound piece has yet to come in. And I believe it's critical. I do the same thing. I have my tracks that I listen to, and I know Kathleen does as well. And, even as part of the meditation process. But sound is, I think, essential. And I think it's important too to have some background sound as you're cooking, because we're dealing with food that is water-based and, life-giving. And the water in our bodies gravitate towards that. And I think that we can build a better, more sustainable relationship with the plant foods when we're doing that, when we're having that.
That's it. And I've never even thought about that with cooking, but that's interesting you say that, because if you think back culturally, I know my grandmother, she would sing as she cooked. As she's nourishing the family, she would sing. And that's profound.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I do want to talk about culturally who gets impacted the most with, redlining with certain areas in the country that they don't have access. But before we do, I want to remind people you're listening to the Veganpreneur Revolution Podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, with my host, V-Lynn Hawkins. And today we're talking with Dr. Shayla Toombs-Withers, Dr. TW, who has a new book coming out soon. We don't know when, but it's a cookbook. But let's touch on the whole cultural thing. How true is it? Because I saw something recently where somebody was posting about buying certain kinds of plant-based foods, and they really were showing their privilege, if you will. And somebody called them on it. They said, that's white privilege. And a lot of times we don't realize what our privilege is until something is put in front of us. But the truth is, there's a film out called They're Trying to Kill Us. And phenomenal film. Yeah.
We'll send you the link.
Okay.
We'll actually put it in the show notes. It's I'm sorry, Kathleen.
Go ahead, please.
But just really quickly, because I'm so glad you brought that in. For the month of February, it is showing for free. And we'll make sure to share the link, and we're putting it out on social media and in our newsletter. And it's just really important because of the story that's behind it. But I won't take anything else away from that or what Kathleen was trying to bring in here. So back to you, my friend.
Absolutely. And it features a lot of hip hop artists and rappers who are plant-based, who were on the trajectory of heart disease, diabetes, type 2, especially obesity, as a result of the foods they grew up on, and also the limitation to certain foods. And it's phenomenal. It definitely is one. But how prevalent and how true is it that certain communities of people are more at risk than others?
Yeah, it's very true. And what we know about it is that it's multifactorial with these risks. And so, there is a part of it where a lot of communities of color, where people aren't aware of the power and the healing power of plant-based nutrition. Just because, and I feel like some of that is because for so long, what we have seen in the plant-based space was always, more so commonly the thin white woman trope, that you a lot of times see. And so people would always say, oh, it's just the tree hugger type or and so what we know is that if people don't see people that look like them doing something, then it's harder for them to embrace. We've even seen that within healthcare. There have been some studies that have come out that show that when you have a healthcare provider that looks like you're more likely to get better healthcare. And it's, due to these unconscious biases that occur. And so, we've seen some of that where people were in communities of color, people just weren't aware even that this could be helpful for them. But then you also have food deserts. So you have, you talked a little bit about Kathleen, about redlining and how zoning and things have come into place where, in some more low income areas where, they're more likely to put a new liquor store or a fast food restaurant there than they are a grocery store, unfortunately, or a farmer's market. And so, that's going to impact that community when they don't have access to be able to get these more healthful foods. And then you have safe spaces. And so there was recently even from the CDC, they even promoted this study where they found that in more low socioeconomic class areas, which are predominantly communities of color, they didn't have as many safe green spaces. So, if we are commonly telling people, oh, you need to go exercise, but they can't afford gym equipment or go to a gym. But they also don't have a park that they can safely go, walk around, or sidewalks that can safely get them, outside and outdoors. Then you're also impacting that population's health too from that place. So, there are a lot of different factors. And then there's the environmental factor. So we know that, we just saw, in Flint, how the water crisis that was there and what that did to folks' health and impacted those communities of color. We know that a lot of times factories are in these other areas too that impact communities of color from a lot of the environmental impact that plays a part. So there's so many factors that plays a part into this to where it does impact communities of color the most. And what we end up finding is that these communities do suffer at higher rates from heart disease, cancers, strokes, diabetes. But, doing things like this, what you all are doing, and I passionately like to speak on this too, to be able to just help people to know that there, are solutions and things that they can do. So even just, those little things that people can go do. One of the things here in Chattanooga, I don't know if this exists everywhere, but in Chattanooga, folks, the bus line does go to our local farmers markets. And so they can take the city bus to a farmer's market. And the farmers market also will accept EBT or the government assistance too, so that they can use those funds to pay for fresher food. So, those are just maybe some little things that can have some impact too.
Which really kind of leads into it does lead into the next question, where there's so many problems. I mean, if somebody isn't eating healthy as a child, they're not as focused in school, so they don't get the kind of education they need, and on and on. I mean, it's a domino effect. So let's assume that somebody is listening to this podcast episode and something sparked them to give it a try. Where do they even start? If they're in an area where the foods are not readily available, if they just don't know, because it's amazing how jaded we can become the more we immerse ourselves into the plant-based lifestyle. It's like, well, doesn't everybody know that a green smoothie is good for you? And how do you even make one?
Right. What if you don't have a blender, or
that's it. So
right.
where can somebody start who, regardless of what their location is, but they're really curious about what can I do that will give me a quick result so I at least see that this is true?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, really start basic, just really, really basic. And so what that can look like, even rice and beans. I often tell people, especially if you have access to somewhere where you can get bulk foods, which I know also isn't everywhere either. But if you can buy it in bulk, it'll a lot of times be cheaper than prepackaged things. But you can typically get dried rice, for just $1 or $2, and the same with dried beans. And those are, a good start. You can get a lot of nutrition, a lot of fiber in that rice, protein in those beans and the fiber. So you can really, tick off a lot of those nutrient boxes that way. Another tip I give to folks is to buy frozen in terms of vegetables, because, a lot of times it's easier to find frozen than it is to find more, good looking fresh food. And then that frozen food is not going to go bad as quickly. And, the frozen food is actually picked in the ripe of its freshness. So it actually still has some good nutritious value for you, and can a lot of times be cheaper. So, get frozen food. And so really, even if you just have access to just a little stovetop and a microwave, you can do a lot if you've got some frozen vegetables and some dried rice and beans. So even if you just have to start that basic, start there, and that's going to give you a lot of nutrients.
Excellent.
That is excellent. Yes. So, Dr. Withers, let's talk about children and the children that you see in your practice. You're a family practice physician. And do you find that the children that you see, if something is wrong, you're able to bring their parents into the conversation of changing diet and lifestyle for that child's benefit that also helps with the family? Tell us some of the experiences that you've seen there.
Yeah. So I don't see small children in my practice anymore. And this is just as of like the past year and a half. And really that's because I have 3 kids of my own. And as they've gotten older, it's a lot, with juggling their schedules between my husband and I. We're officially outnumbered with 3 kids and 2 parents.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see small children, but I do see children over the age of 12, and then just having my own kids. But yeah, so when it comes to kids, one of the things that I would commonly see are a couple of things. One would be skin issues, especially in children of color. We see a lot of eczema issues. I'll even use the example of my little nephew, sweet little thing. And so, but his parents, they aren't plant-based. And so he came to stay with me a couple of weeks. They were traveling. And little guy was just itching all the time. And, his mom had told me, said, yeah, he's got eczema, and it's pretty bad. And, he's just always itching. And so she had dropped off his little, I think he was maybe about 2.5 at the time. She dropped off his food, and she drops off this, gallon of whole milk. And so I told her, I said, well, I'm going to tell you right now, you can take this with you because he's not going to get it while he's here. And so, she was fine because she already, know how we eat here at my home. And so I did not, of course, give him that. He ate what my children ate. So he ate plant-based, those whole about 2 weeks that he was here. He had oat milk instead of his whole milk. And even just in that short time frame, his skin started to clear up. Little guy wasn't, itching like crazy like he was when, he first came. And so I sent several of the cartons of it home. I said, okay, don't give him any more of that. You're just going to be giving him this. And so his mom, would send me pictures of how he's doing. And so, yeah. And she said, I didn't think if I gave him something different, I didn't think he would take it. I was like, well, you just give it, and that's the option. So, and he did. But so just a lot of times parents, they have this hesitation, especially if it's something that they haven't done themselves. But what we know about dairy and is that it's highly inflammatory, and it can cause a lot of these skin conditions. And so seeing kids of color, eczema comes into play a lot, and so that's one thing. And then behavioral issues, ADHD, we see a lot of, or even children just acting out. And what we know, is a lot of these processed foods that kids tend to be exposed to can contribute to those things. And so even just limiting that intake and giving kids more whole foods can even improve some of these behavioral issues and things. So yeah, there are things that can be helpful for children.
That's incredible. And you kind of answered the next question I have, which is the household with your husband and your children. Are you all 100% plant-based?
Not all 100%, because my husband, he grew up on a farm, and so he's still pretty plant-based, but just not 100%, I would say.
What about your kids?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. And which leads to another question. I didn't think I was going to ask this one, but how do people, and when you have patients who they have gone plant-based, they're 100%, they're feeling great, they're losing weight, they're, the weight that they didn't need, and it's working for them, but their spouse is not on board. And if anything, there's a lot of resistance. How do you address that with your patients, and what can you recommend to people listening or watching right now?
Yeah. And I will say I've been blessed. So even though my husband is not 100% plant-based, he makes some of the most amazing plant-based foods. Like he whipped up a tofu stir fry with lo mein just last night.
Wow.
Wow. Nice.
He really does, but I know not everyone has that at their home. But yeah, so really though, really for that individual, they have to keep their own focus and their own why into focus as to why they're making that change for themselves. And so even if that may look like them fixing, preparing a meal, if they're the one who's the person that prepares the meal in the home, prepare the meal, and then, give those other people options to eat. But if they feel like they need to go prepare something else, then they can do that. That's typically the way it works in my home. If my husband does want something else, he'll go prepare it because he knows I'm not gonna, be the one to go prepare that. And he wouldn't expect me to, and so really, I just challenge people to think about their own why and why they are doing something for their health or what their needs are.
Okay. And Dr. Withers, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best website to go to?
Yeah, drshayla.com/EOH. It really will link to all of my other contacts there.
Okay. I did find this one. Would this one work also? Essence of Health Wellness Clinic. Okay. And it's streaming across the bottom for people who are watching this right now. And for people who are listening, it's essenceofhealthwellnessclinic.com. And we'll have that in the show notes. So, Belin, what's your next question? Because I have a boatload of questions.
I do too. And, I have to really get myself inserted in here sometimes because Kathleen, I love it because we are both so passionate about this whole space that we're in, that it's important for us to get these questions asked and hear the answers for ourselves and for our entire audience. But I'd really like to know, where do you get your patient base from? Referrals? Are they medical referrals? Are they people referrals? How are you having people to find you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a couple of ways. Referrals for sure from other physicians, in town. There are a couple of cardiologists as well as some OBGYNs in town, who would like to help, their patients more in that capacity. And so they'll send them my way. I also do a lot on social media. So a lot of people will find me on social media. I'll make different posts about different topics and health related topics. I also have my podcast, the Essence of Health Tea Time podcast. And so folks will find me there and hear topics and come in and visit. So really those, predominant ways.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay, I do have another question. So, Vylin, if you don't jump in, I'm going to take it. Okay, it's great. We both have had our own podcast shows. We flew solo, and in doing our co-hosting, it's like we're doing this dance that we're really getting good at the footsteps. So I love it. I love it. And to have an amazing guest like you, Dr. Withers, is just fantastic. Let's go back to the allergies and the diseases that non-plant-based foods, and we're talking dairy, we're talking animal products, we're talking anything like that. Let's talk about some of the most common diseases that people assume they're just stuck with. Oh, it's my genetics. Oh, it's, my mother had cancer, so I'm going to get cancer. What are the diseases that truly are preventable by giving up meat and dairy and going to a whole food plant-based diet?
Yeah. Diabetes, for one, and I'm speaking in terms of type 2 diabetes. We do know, the type 1 is an autoimmune condition, and, people aren't always able to avoid that. Although there have been some studies that have come about that have even shown that a whole food plant-based diet can lessen the amount of insulin that a type 1 person with diabetes may need. So there are some benefits there. But type 2 diabetes, for sure, a lot of people will, tend to think that, my mom and my grandma had it. Well, a lot of that was lifestyle related as to why they had it too. What we know is that the fiber and the nutrients that you get in whole plant foods actually help to regulate blood sugar. When people are consuming these diets that are higher in saturated fat and higher in sugar, what it does is it makes our insulin not work as well in our body. And that's what leads to that type 2 diabetes condition. But by implementing more whole plant foods into our diet, it actually more so regulates and stabilizes those blood sugars, which in turn makes your insulin work better to reduce, to prevent diabetes as well as reverse it in these situations too.
Okay. And what are some other common diseases or ailments that, whether it be gut health or whatever?
Yeah. Colon cancer is another one that some more recent studies have come out that have shown that your chances of colon cancer are much, much lower with a whole food plant-based diet versus, the WHO, World Health Organization, have even confirmed that meat products like bacon and hot dogs are actually carcinogens, cancer causing, because they can actually increase your rates of things like colon cancer and prostate cancer. And so by eating plant-based foods can actually, decrease your rates of developing these type of conditions, even blood pressure related conditions and heart disease. What we know, when people are eating a lot of animal products and a lot of animal fats, it's raising cholesterol levels and making it harder for blood flow to occur. But by eating these natural plant foods, typically for my blood pressure patients and my heart disease patients, I like to make sure they're eating a lot of dark leafy greens and a lot of beets, because what we know is that these particular plant foods actually can naturally help. I call them sweepers. They can actually help to sweep out a lot of those plaques out of the blood vessels and reduce these risk and reverse these conditions that way.
That's incredible.
Nice. So, and I like calling you Dr. Shayla. So, Dr. Shayla, what is your number one recommended resource for your for other doctors? And then I want to also ask you what your number one recommended resource and probably book, movie, that type of thing for patients.
Okay. So you mean resources for other doctors who may want to learn more about plant-based
Yes.
nutrition? Okay, got it, got it. Yeah. So I would say really the China study, really because what I like about that book, even though it's an old book, I like that they actually went into the science. And for doctors, a lot of us is like, if we can't see the study and know, what the number, the statistical rate of this and that and the other, then we just aren't going to believe it. So really, yeah, the China study, and then PCRM, so Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, they do a lot of great work, and they actually put out a lot of scientifically evidence-based material so that people in the medical realm who are looking for, what the studies and what the science actually showed. So definitely for healthcare folks, I would recommend those sources. And then for patients, I would say, really, they don't so much need that hardcore science, but they need to know, what these foods can do for them. One of the places where I started was with Happy Herbivore, and the reason I started with Happy Herbivore, what I liked is because at the time, I was a busy resident physician, and I did residency at the time where the 80-hour work week was a thing. And so what I liked about her books and her recipes is that it was stuff that you probably already had in your pantry, or you didn't have to go to any special market to find it, and the steps were maybe only 3 or 4 ingredients to making those things. So resources of that nature, because I find that a lot of people, when I'm talking to them about plant-based, they're like, well, I don't want to have to go do some, kind of complex thing or find some, ingredient, even nutritional yeast. I didn't know what nutritional yeast was until I went plant-based, but it's something that probably every plant-based person, has readily available in their home now. But people don't always know these things and don't want to go do these things because it just seems challenging. So you have to find ways to take those barriers out. One of the things that I did in the clinic here recently, we had a cooking event, and so I actually showed folks how that they could cook easy plant-based meals. And so one of the ladies that attended, she said, I wanted to attend this because I tried going plant-based and I bought this block of tofu, but I was afraid to open it. She said, I've just had it sitting in my refrigerator for a couple of weeks. And she said, I didn't know what to do with it. So she came with, one of the meals that I cooked did have tofu in it. And she said, but it's so easy. I couldn't believe how easy that was. So, but for us that have been plant-based for so long, we forget, but really just showing people just how simple that they can start.
I love the fact that you did that meal prep,
Yes.
because I actually have somebody in Salt Lake that I referred over to a doctor we recently interviewed who does potlucks, and she has been struggling with her weight. She does all these fad diets, on and on. And I said, would you be interested in going to a plant-based potluck at a doctor's house? And she's like, well, yeah. I said, okay, I'll introduce you. And so that's such a nice entree for some people, because it's not so overwhelming. They can get together. So love that you're doing that. Here's a question about if somebody had to pick one or the other. They're saying, okay, I'm ready to do this. Dairy first or meat first? Which one, if they said, I'll do one, but I won't do all the meat, the fish, the chicken, blah, blah, blah. Which one would you recommend that they start with?
Ooh, I like that question. I would say meat, honestly, because usually if you get rid of the meat first, most people just aren't sitting there gorging on just cheese alone. They probably have that, cheese over some broccoli or over a salad or something, so that they're still getting in more plants. So I would say, if you're gonna pick one, then let the meat go.
Okay.
But I definitely would recommend that dairy comes, really closely behind.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
And like when I ate cheese, I actually would get a block of cheese, and
Okay, so I could be wrong.
Yeah, I have a very addictive personality. Eileen can tell you that.
But no, cheese, they found that cheese is highly addictive. It's a highly addictive food. Yeah, because of that fat and salt content in it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which actually leads to another question, and then I'll turn it over to B. Lynn. You talked about, like heart issues and blood flow and all that. And this is for the men that are listening and watching right now. How true is it that a man can have erectile dysfunction as a result of eating meat and dairy?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's very true. Yeah, and because erectile dysfunction it's also a lifestyle related condition a lot of times. What we tend to see with people who do have erectile dysfunction is that they also have high blood pressure. They also have diabetes, sleep apnea, these other lifestyle related type of conditions. And when a man gets an erection, it's blood flowing into the penis, which helps that to have a quality erection. And so when you're having these health conditions that cause vascular and blood vessel issues, then that also in turn will cause the sexual dysfunction for men. What I like about the movie Game Changers is that they brought that up in that movie. And I love that they actually, had bodybuilders and football players, because a lot of times, men, they won't necessarily respond to that, thinking that they need, these steaks and a lot of these, meats to get enough protein. And so I love that they brought that out in that particular documentary.
That was phenomenal.
It was.
So, Lynn?
It was. Thank you, Kathleen. Let's talk about the aging population for a moment. Kathleen and I are about to be 70. We are actually, as plant-based people, vegans, we're looking at the next couple of decades being actually probably some of the best, healthiest decades of our lives. I was an extreme athlete for between my 20s and 50s, 60s. And then, a life incident occurred, and it was kind of like my whole athleticism got buried under trying to just stay alive, basically, beyond this incident that occurred. And then, some health-related things started happening. I've had 2 total knee replacement surgeries, and I feel better now than I did 10 years ago when I was still in my athletic space, and it's probably more like 12 or 13 years ago. But anyway, let's talk about this aging population. One of our friends had open heart surgery at 61 and, never did anything before that, couch potato kind of thing, and has lived the best of his life since changing to this whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Tell us what you've experienced in this aging population, or what you know of in this aging population, that whole plant foods and this lifestyle change we're talking about can really have a major impact.
Yeah, for sure. And so, one of the things that, I like to even tell my patients is that you're never too old to get started. A lot of people will tend to think that, oh, well, I'm, this age or that age, so I'm too old to, it's not going to make a difference at this point, but it actually will. And, you talk about your friend who suffered the heart related incident, and some of the studies, that have been shown even within the plant-based realm that Dr. Campbell did were with some of the sickest of the sick heart patients, and they were able to reverse, these things in these people who had already tried other more intervention type of methods to try to improve their heart health. But even beyond that, you two are ladies, and so what we see with aging women is osteoporosis. However, plants, you can get a lot of quality calcium in plant foods, and even just staying active, as you all do, is helpful for osteoporosis. A lot of some of the older marketing people would see the got milk commercials, and you need this milk to get your strong bones and that kind of thing. But now that's been debunked, and we know that dairy can actually weaken the bones because we don't tend to absorb those nutrients from animals as well as we do from plants. And so introducing more plant-based foods can also be good for your bone health and preventing fractures, which can also be detrimental as folks age. Plant-based foods are also good for brain health. as we age, we start to get concerns for dementia or Alzheimer's and, these brain-related conditions. But plants can also be helpful for that, for helping us to stay focused, helping our brain to stay sharp, as well as movement. Movement actually does too, helps to release those hormones within the brain that keeps us focused and happy and in a better mood, and actually help us to think more clearly. So it's definitely helpful for a number of things as we age.
I love that. And just recently, Wendy Williams was diagnosed with dementia and with aphasia too, which is so, it's so sad. Yeah. And I'm dealing with my own aunt she's in her 90s, but her quality of life is so poor and sad. And she, I look at that and I think, I do not want to end up like that. If there's any, and that's the interesting thing, because some people will attack the plant-based movement and the vegan movement saying, oh, you think you can cure everything. No, I don't. But I do think that I can prevent a lot of it and I can minimize my risks. So as we wind this down, we definitely have to have you back on. When your book comes out, we're having you back on.
Now that you're going to haunt you,
next time you go on a run, you're going to be, okay, I'm planting this right now. You're going to be on a run. You're going, doggone that, Kathleen. I got to write that book. But honestly, we would love to see you write that book. We'd love to have you back on the show, regardless of the book or not, because you have such a wealth of knowledge. And I just feel so blessed that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule to join us and to share with our community. And in winding down, Belin, did you have any more questions? And then the last question would be, what are your final thoughts?
I do. I have one more question about business. You started your own practice. You came out of where did you come out of? Was it a hospital situation or a medical practice?
Hospital-based practice.
And to start your own practice, what do you feel was the biggest motivator, and then the biggest thing that you had to kind of go deep and bring out of yourself in order to make this happen?
Yeah. So really the biggest motivator was that I was not practicing in the capacity that I wanted to practice in, and in the capacity that I knew would be most helpful for my patients. I was in that traditional, like I said, hospital-owned type of practice where everything is on a time clock. Like it's not about patient care at all. It's just about how many people can you see and how short time can you see them. And so it's almost like a factory belt. You're just running them through the day, versus all of those things we talked about that I like to get more in depth with my patients. Those things take time. I can't do those within a 7-minute office visit, which is why, my patients have 30 or 60-minute appointments in my office, because it takes time for us to be able to talk about these things and get to that. And so, that was my motivation, really for opening the practice, because I knew that there was so much more that I could do for people if only I would be able to be the one to make that deciding factor and to have more time within my schedule to do that. And then what I had to learn for myself is really to talk about myself and talk about what I do. A lot of times as doctors, especially when you come from the traditional model, a person may be coming to see you because, well, your name was on their insurance card. And so, that's just where they went. But versus now, people come to see me for a reason, because they know that I'm, offering something more and something different. And they know that they want and they need that. But really me getting used to telling people about that and talking about that was really something that I had to overcome to really, let people know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for doing that, because the world is a better place because of it. And we really want people to know that you're available. And do you practice just in the Chattanooga area? Do you practice outside? Do you have patients coming from outside of the area to you, but just within the state?
So my brick and mortar practice is in Chattanooga. I have folks, because we're on that state line, I do have folks from both Georgia and Tennessee who come to see me in the brick and mortar practice. But then I also offer virtual. I'm licensed in over 30 states. So I offer virtual telehealth as well as I do some health coaching. So even for folks who, have their own doctors, but they're just looking for someone who can help them with just the nutrition piece or just those other pieces of movement and those other strategies, but not needing anything necessarily medically, I'm available to and offer services virtually.
Awesome. And are there other doctors that are practicing within your brick and mortar facility?
Nope, it's just me.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Well, you are just a dynamic woman, dynamic doctor in this plant-based vegan space. And we so appreciate you for being here with us today. Any final thoughts, Kathleen, Dr. Shayla?
I want to say thank you because I've learned a lot today, and we definitely want to have you back on, and we want to help spread the message about what you're doing because we need more docs like you. We just do. The world is in a world of hurt. Health is going down the drain with a lot of people. Obesity is out of control. Children are getting obesity at rates that weren't even heard of in adults, and to have you do what you're doing, doctor, is so amazing. And I just want to thank you for being a part of our podcast today.
Thank you both for having me. I feel like I could talk to you both just all day. So
well, we'll make that happen. And I want to remind people that you've been listening to the Veganpreneur Revolution Podcast show. I'm your host, Kathleen Gage, with our other host, V-Lynn Hopkins. And we invite you to look at our website, which is veganvisibilityproductions.com. That's veganvisibilityproductions.com, where you'll find a wealth of information about our podcast show, our blog, our upcoming newsletter, our services. Do check it out. And please subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button and leave a review. So with that, thank you both very much. Have a great day. You've been listening to the Veganpreneur Revolution Podcast show with V-Lynn Hopkins and Kathleen Gage. Be sure to leave a review, give a thumbs up, and subscribe to this channel. And visit our website at veganvisibilityproductions.com. That's veganvisibilityproductions.com. Have a great day and live healthy.